All that stuff will become relevant to this election as we go along. Well, I think one of the if I've made any contribution to this, then one of the things that I'm most proud of is to have come up with the phrase problem, reaction, solution to describe the most used and the most powerful method of mass, mind, and emotional manipulation that has been used on us to advance this agenda. It used to be called the Hegelian Dialética. And I thought problem, reaction, solution would sum it up more succinctly. What it means is that you want to change society in a way that if you did it openly and had a meeting and said, right, well, tell the public this is what we're going to do, you know that you would get a massive public reaction against what you want. So you don't do it openly. You play this technique. Stage one, you create a problem. It could be a terrorist attack, it could be a war, it could be a government collapse, it could be a run on the currency, it could be a credit crunch, rising food prices, rising mortgages. Anything that will give you the opportunity to install the solution to that problem that will advance your agenda. Once you've covertly created the problem, you then tell the people through a pathetic mainstream media the version of that problem that you want the public to believe, i.e. Bin Laden orchestrated 9/11, the Oswald killed Kennedy, whatever. If we had a journalistic profession, even just in any way justifying the name, problem, reaction, solution fall down, because the explanation would be investigated, it would be found to be wanting, it would be reported to the people, this would collapse. Because we don't have a journalistic profession worthy of the name, the problem's created, the cover story of the problem is then reported to the people as official history, uninvestigated, and what they're looking for at stage two is a reaction from the public that says, in effect, something must be done, what are they going to do about it? Fear, outrage, do something. And then those who covertly created the problem, got the public reaction, do something, then openly, through changes in legislation, offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves covertly created. And what are those solutions? They are changes in society to advance the Orwellian Big Brother state and the centrally controlled global agenda. At the 33rd level of Freemasonry in the Scottish Rite, that's the highest official level, they have a motto, Ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. Problem, reaction, solution. You try manipulating harmony, very difficult. You try manipulating chaos, piece of cake. They want chaos. You see, through problem, reaction, solution, we need to switch our minds a bit here. Because of problem, reaction, solution, they don't want crime figures to come down. Because if they do, they can't offer the solution to the crime figures, which is more control. They want people knifed in the streets. They want problems with food, because then they can offer the solution of genetically modified food, which they're doing, this government now, even though the people have rejected it overwhelmingly. They want the problems. They have to have them or they can't offer the solution. This is what Bush said after 9/11. You're free and freedom is beautiful, and you know it'll take time to restore chaos and order out of chaos, but we will. Problem, reaction, solution. This is the Second World War. You look at the First World War, after it was over, global power was in dramatically fewer hands than it was when that war started. Nothing changes a society globally or locally like a war. After the Second World War, it was in even fewer hands. And we had the creation of the United Nations, we had the Bretton Woods Agreement, we had the IMF, we had the World Bank, came after it. And what they did, these bloodlines, these shadow people at the top of these pyramids, they were behind the British government and the American government of Roosevelt. They were behind Stalin, who was one of their frontmen. Remember the thing, both sides. And they funded the Nazi party into power, and they funded their war machine. In this book, written, 15 odd years ago, I exposed President Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, as a funder of Hitler and the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers paid for a whole floor of a German university for a guy called Ernst Rudin, who was Hitler's race purity expert. The Rockefellers. And the Rockefellers are behind all these organizations that I'm talking about. Now, Prescott Bush was a leading figure in an organization called the Union Banking Corporation, which was one of the Harriman operations in America. It interfaced with the European steel and banking empire of a guy called Fritz Thyssen, who was an acknowledged funder of Hitler, and funded through to Tyson vast amounts of money. This is Prescott Bush, the president's grandfather, to fund Hitler. How did they go from the Weimar Republic, when they were taking their wages home in wheelbarrows, such was the inflation, to a war machine that could take on Europe? Because of this. And after I came out with it, a few years passed, and then a guy who's I think he's the president of the Holocaust Museum in Florida, he came out publicly in America and said the Bush family fortune overwhelmingly comes from funding the Nazis, and even the Guardian newspaper. Hello, there you are. All right, nice you caught up. In the last year or two, has run stories about Prescott Bush funding the Nazis. And what they were doing was creating the two sides to bring into conflict 55 million casualties, by the way, into conflict in a war, which has led to the change in the global state. That's how it's done. This is what a Nazi said this. I wonder if we'll kind of recognize this from the last few years. Why, of course, the people don't want war. Why should some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best he can get out of it is to come back to his farm in one piece? Naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia, nor in England, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for their lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. Hermann Goering. Abraham Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. Without public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. He who molds opinion is greater than he who enacts the laws. And he could say, he who molds opinion can then enact any laws he wants. Problem, reaction, solution. This is Hitler justifying the creation, that's a later one. This is him from Mein Kampf. All propaganda must be so popular on such an intellectual level that even the most stupid of those towards whom it is directed will understand it. People can be made to perceive paradise as hell, and the other way round, to consider the most wretched sort of life a paradise. On the basic intellectual level, it's the terrorists. Oh, we got to protect you from the terrorists, so we got to take your freedoms away so we can protect your freedom. Oh, that sounds good. I'll vote for him.
There was an interesting connection between the rise of fascism in Europe and the consciousness of politically radical people about corporate power, because there was a recognition that fascism rose in Europe with the help of enormous corporations.
Mussolini was greatly admired all across the spectrum. Business loved him. Investment shot up. And suddenly when Hitler came in Germany, the same thing happened there. Investment shot up in Germany. He had the workforce under control. He was getting rid of dangerous left-wing elements. Investment opportunities were improving. There was no problems. These are wonderful countries.
I think one of the greatest untold stories of the 20th century is the collusion between corporations, especially in America, and Nazi Germany. First, in terms of how the corporations from America helped to essentially rebuild Germany and support the early Nazi regime, and then, when the war broke out, figured out a way to keep everything going. So General Motors was able to keep Opel going, Ford was able to keep their thing going, and companies like Coca-Cola, because they couldn't keep the Coca-Cola going, so what they did was they invented Fanta Orange for the Germans. And that's how Coke was able to keep their profits coming in to Coca-Cola. So when you drink Fanta Orange, that's the Nazi drink. That was created so that Coke could continue making money while millions of people died.
When Hitler came to power in 1933, his goal was to dismantle and destroy the Jewish community. This was an enterprise so fast that it required the resources of a computer. But in 1933, there was no computer. What there was the IBM punch card system, which controlled and stored information based upon the holes that were punched in various rows and columns. Naturally, there was no off-the-shelf software as there is today. Each application was custom designed, and an engineer had to personally configure it. Millions of people of all religions and nationalities and characteristics went through the concentration camp system. That's an extraordinary traffic management program that required an IBM system in every railroad direction and an IBM system in every concentration camp. Now, this is a typical prisoner card. There are little boxes where all the information is to be punched in. We compare this information to the code sheet for concentration camps. And here you see Auschwitz is 1, Buchenwald 2, Dachau is 3. Now, what kinds of prisoners were they? They could be a Jehovah's Witness for 2, a homosexual for 3, communist for 6, or a Jew would be 8. Now, what was their status? 1 was released, 2 was transferred, 4 was executed, 5 was suicide, and 6. Code 6. Sonderbehandlung, special treatment, meant the gas chamber or sometimes a bullet. They would punch that number in, the material was tabulated, the machines were set, and of course, the punch cards, by the millions, had to be printed, and they were printed exclusively by IBM, and the profits were recovered just after the war.
I really do believe that that particular accusation has been fairly discredited as a serious accusation. That is, the fact that they have used equipment, that is a fact. But how they got it, how much cooperation they got, and any kind of collusion, trying to connect dots that are not connected, I think that's the part that is discredited. Generally, you sell computers and they're used in a variety of ways, and you always hope they're used in the more positive ways possible. If you ever found out they are used in ways that are not positive, then you would hope that you stop supporting that. But do you always know? Can you always tell? Can you always find out?
IBM would, of course, say that it had no control over its German subsidiary. But here on October 9th of 1941, a letter is being written directly to Thomas J. Watson with all sorts of detail about the activities of the German subsidiary. None of these machines were sold. They were all leased by IBM, and they had to be serviced on site once a month, even if that was at a concentration camp such as Dachau, Buchenwald. This is a typical contract with IBM and the Third Reich, which was instituted in 1942. It's not with the Dutch subsidiary, it's not with the German subsidiary, it is with the IBM Corporation in New York.
You know, as it happens, I know that story. I discussed it more than once with old Mr. Watson, and I was around at the time. I'm not saying that Watson didn't know that the German government used punch cards. He probably did know. After we had very few customers. Watson didn't want to do it. It was not because he thought it was immoral or not, but because Watson, with a very keen sense of public relations,
Transnational corporations have a long and dark history of condoning tyrannical governments. Is it narcissism that compels them to seek their reflection in the regimented structures of fascist regimes? It should not surprise us that corporate allegiance to profits will trump their allegiance to any flag. A recent U.S. Treasury Department report revealed that in 1 week alone, 57 U.S. corporations were fined for trading with official enemies of the United States, including terrorists, tyrants, and despotic regimes.
Order, brethren, to receive the most merciful, the Grand Master.